Hey everybody, welcome back to UR Free TV and TGIF. So glad to be back with you here on Friday, July 17th, 2026. Wow, what a day. What a night last. Woo! Woo! Okay. There you go. That's interesting. What a night last night with the incredible speech by President Trump. Certainly not a national declaration of emergency, but an incredible, important first step. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into so much more what's going on with Rubio and Bessent and Stephen Miller in this summit that is about preempting the election fraud by the going after the left-wing NGO organizations, money especially, and getting the cooperation of all these other governments, 70 countries. Very, very intense, very important. Huge new developments in Ukraine as well as huge uprisings and protests in the streets there. But we'll just jump in with my disclaimer first. This video is for entertainment purposes only. It is protected by the United States Constitution protecting free speech, as well as the Sullivan Act and reporting. It is not intended to bully or harass anyone, never to incite violence, hatred, or lawlessness of any kind. It doesn't give legal, medical, or financial advice, and there are further disclaimers in the description below. Okay, sorry to start out with the sneeze. I don't know where that came from, but probably the machines. But basically, I always start by saying thank you, and I'm so glad I didn't forget because I would never want to. Thank you so much to everyone supporting the channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you for Teresa for joining on monthly. So appreciate that, and everybody supporting monthly. You make it happen, and it's a shoestring, so I'm so appreciative. And also, Teresa, thank you for the wonderful words. So wonderful. So, okay, we're going to jump in here with the news and put on the glasses, and we'll get busy. Okay, so a couple things I did want to mention here. President Trump specifically and directly, okay, as the executive commander-in-chief, asked everybody, please call your representatives and senators about the Save America Act. And this is not the language that they put in with the reconciliation bill that is baloney, that doesn't make it mandatory to do these to have voter ID and all the things in the Save Act. Basically, that's just the language of the Save Act saying, if you do it, we'll pay for everything. You know, we've got 10 billion set aside, and we'll give you, you know, we'll fund your election process if you implement the Save America Act measures. That's baloney. We want it mandatory. And President Trump is calling out for everybody in his speech last night to make the calls, or you'll use billblasterapp.org or app it if you're an apper. But basically, this is about calling 202-224-3121 for your senator and 2321 for Thune, okay, directly, who, you know, is under the gun here and needs to be, because 27 votes could get him out as leader. I would love to see that, and I would love to get Mike Lee in there. Mike Lee's calling for stopping the recess, the upcoming summer vacation, the August 6-week vacation that they get to take and go off to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket and wherever they go. And also, he's calling for firing the parliamentarian put in there, a deep stater from long ago, right? And so this needs to happen, okay? And also call your House, because they put forth this language of, in passing the reconciliation bill, okay, with the NDA that still NDAA in it, that still has the Israel fusion section that's renamed Section 219 now, to fuse the military of Israel and the United States, which is absolutely treasonous, basically. Let's just call it what it is. It's absolutely treason. So that in itself is crazy, but basically you need to call also your representative, 202-225-3121 and 2777 directly to Mike Johnson, our awful Speaker of the House. Okay, so moving on from there, Trump specifically asked for it, so, you know, if he could do it, that'd be really fantastic. You'll feel good when you do it. And so we want to really hit those phones. Okay. And also, and I'll link Bill Blaster app below as well, so you can have those numbers and that. So if you want to hit the socials too, because hitting their socials really hard also makes a huge difference. We don't think it does. We know they're so under control, but this new pressure from Trump's speech last night really is having, even though the mainstream media is ignoring it. Disgusting, awful. Even Fox News was awful. And CBS with their disclaimer that they put up beforehand. And Fox News, their biggest story today was like the man dressed as a woman who's a completely not smart person, who is running for the Senate seat of what was Plattner's, that people voted for him, 75% of the vote supposedly, but we never know these days, who is literally dressed as a man and says, I would never lie to you. You know, like he's pretending he's a woman. He's saying, I've never lied to you. I would never deceive you. I would just want to use the girls' bathroom, and literally this is the kind of crazy that we're dealing with. Talk about a CCP mass, mass formation, mind control crazy. That is our elections. That's a good example. And I'm sorry this is going on for so long as an introduction, but I also want to mention this. If you are going into, if you're in Massachusetts and you want to do this on Sunday, this great event, I'm going to link it below so you can get the exact details. But this is in Marblehead. If you've ever heard of Patrick K. O'Donnell, he's the great historian of the Revolutionary War and also Civil War, basically talking about the military aspects of it, and makes these into almost novel type books. His new one called Revolutionary Snipers is coming out in August. But he'll be there. But in Marblehead, Massachusetts, this is where the Marblehead Mariners, that basically were the first Navy, right, for the the colonials, and in the Revolutionary War, they were the ones that saved the day over and over for Washington, when after losing so many battles, and then and they came to the rescue over and over. And this is largely based out of Marblehead, Massachusetts. And it's a beautiful place to go if you're there. It's kind of off the beaten path up there in the North Shore, but it's a beautiful town. And they're going to be having their 250 celebration event, and specifically with speeches about the Marblehead Mariners and how they were, such heroes in the Revolutionary War. So I wanted to point that out, and I will link it below for you. Okay, let's move in. So, okay, where am I going to start? There's so much that always, is just in front of me. And as you can see, it's taking me a little while to kind of calm down into this video. I've had kind of a busy day, but when we look at things like Trump is now urging Darlene Graham, okay, to run for the permanent Senate seat in South Carolina, and that's very, very interesting, considering everything here, considering the information they are trying to contain. What is it about this Graham information containment? And I believe we're going to keep finding out more about that. But I think it's very, very interesting how now suddenly it's literally been a few days, and now Trump is saying, hey, Darlene, we want you to run permanently. And this really is a disenfranchisement of voters, I believe, because we've got Mark Lynch, the incredible total patriot, totally believed that Graham was treasonous for his behavior to do with everything from 2020 forward, not to mention before the McCain years and the creation of ISIS, the creation of the Maidan coup, all of it. And Mark Lynch came in second in that primary, and he should be focused on in South Carolina to be the next senator there. So there's something here to do with this Graham information that is pivotal, and it's going to, more is going to come out. I'm sure there's more that we're going to be figuring out here about this. And if you have knowledge, please link it below. Okay, so let's go in here into what's going on with Trump's speech. The focus on the CCP, the focus on communist China, the way that communism has been at the top of his speeches lately, where Trump is exposing communism constantly. He's in New York tonight, in communist New York City, and it's very interesting to watch here while we're having the FIFA game the award ceremony, the winner, all of this that's going to happen tomorrow. That this focus on communism seems to be very in the center. And what happened here at the steal of the election, you had the massive expansion of the Belt and Roads invasion apparatus of the Communist Party. And you had, of course, Dominion voting machine in the Staple Street Dominion transfer with the CCP Corporation. And Dominion has now become, it was acquired by a company called Liberty Vote. It's now called Liberty Vote, trying to rebrand it. And that's all they've done. It's all the same software. It's all the same everything. These machines cannot be saved. They cannot be, if there's machines, there will be election theft. It is 100% absolute, and that's just a fact. And so the ending of the machines, one thing that's been pointed out so well by John Solomon is that, that in England, when they discovered that the CCP in the last election had accessed 40 million UK citizens voter record. It's not voter records. This is their online voter information in the system, and that's what Trump is saying as well. This isn't about getting a list of voters and going after them, to manipulate, to register them fraudulently. This is in the system, and especially in the archives, where they can pop out these different names from these voter rolls and add them as votes, and then disappear them back into the archives using the machines. And when England had this happen, or the UK, what they did was they got rid of the machines, right? Just like France, no machines. And they're able to call their elections in one day and have the results, and it's done. And so as we're watching this go forward, and you see how the website at the White House crashed immediately, the election integrity, whitehouse.gov/election integrity. You can go there. I'm linking it below. For all the documents, it crashed within 5 minutes after the ending of his speech, with everybody going there as soon as he announced it. And we need to look at what's more going to be coming out, right? What more is going to be coming out from this situation? Mark Wayne Mullen came this morning, and it wasn't a total nothing burger, but it was strongly lacking. And this could be, Mark Wayne Mullen, what can I say? He's just not, I have zero trust in this person. There isn't, you can't find a center there to trust in. Very squirrely, he was defensive about John Thune with the SAVE Act when asked about it. The votes just aren't there. This is Mark Wayne Mullen, who literally is like, supposed to, be standing up forward and strong for the SAVE Act to implement President Trump's measures, that are required to have safe elections. And he's like, yeah, but that SAVE Act, we just can't get those votes. And that's this morning at his important press conference that no mainstream media covered, Fox News, nothing. There was nobody put this live that I could see. And, what he had to say in there is there's only 24 states cooperating so far with, they're asked to scrub the voter rolls and basically, work with them to implement some election security measures. But basically, what he had to say, voting begins in 60 days. Okay. And he's saying 30 days from now, we will supposedly have a plan in 30 days. Well, it's going to take 30 days. There's already a plan. But he says, no, 30 days from now, we're going to have a plan where we're going to tell all the states what they can do, and then also get their money from the government to pay for their elections, our taxpayer dollars, if they, save the money from the state, get it from the federal government, and if they do what we tell them to do. But we won't know that for 30 days, okay? And it's very, very interesting to watch all this happen, because he's really cagey. He was really cagey in his 11 a.m. speech. Basically, what he had to say is that he's just pointing out to people that even if you have a real ID, if you're an illegal, you can't use that to vote. That doesn't make you a citizen if you have a real ID. And the only thing he threw out there was that if the states don't comply, he's saying that any states that don't comply with their plan in 30 days, that we'll know about then, even though he should have just been able to say today what that plan is, because they already know what they want. Okay, they want no mass mail-in ballots. They want voter ID and proof of citizenship. Okay, that's what they want, right? And he's saying, well, post-election, and they did already send out their strongly worded letter from DHS to the states, Secretary of States, saying that you can be held criminally responsible for any mass voter election crimes that go on due to your lack of adherence to the law. And he's saying that these crimes for voting illegally or for officials enabling voting illegally is 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine for voting illegally um, or enabling it. He's saying that DHS post-election will scrub all the voter records, and those who voted will be prosecuted to the maximum penalty, and also states' election officials who do not secure their elections will be prosecuted post-election as well. And so it's putting the threat out there now saying, don't do it because we will come after you and we will catch you. But we need that's not, that's ridiculous, okay, compared to people like Patrick Byrne, who came out today and is like, I know somebody who can do this right away. And maybe this is a behind the scenes thing. Patrick Byrne coming out and saying, hey, there's this guy, Tim Meisberger. I've known him throughout all of this since the steal of 2020. He is from the State Department, and he is a longtime veteran of the State Department who set up in 55 foreign elections in places like Burma. He was able within 30 days, able to set up an election with 100% security, 100%, completely, again, paper ballots, same day counting, total chain of custody, total public access to be observed, the counting of the ballots, all of it, optimal security. He said this guy's done it in 55 countries. He was fired after being for 30 years in the State Department, with this election security abroad being his purview. And he was fired after January 6th stuff, and Biden came in and fired him because of who he was, because he knew the election steal, what had happened. But then Trump brought him back in and hired him in the shutting down of USAID because he knew all the ins and outs of the buried bodies of the USAID. And so he came to help dismantle USAID. And then Trump also employed him then to go out and deconstruct and take apart and end the Peace Corps, with all the corruption of the Peace Corps, and to dismantle that. And so what Patrick Byrne is saying is that we need him, and that he can in 30 days. So let's hope that's the Mullen plan, right? Let's hope that's the DHS plan that they're going to come out with. But basically that he's saying that, that could be the way this guy can get it done in 30 days. And so, it sounds like they already know the plan, right? It's really interesting. Yesterday, I'm just kind of finally calming down. Sorry, this has been a little squirrely up to this point. I've been rushing. It's been a rushing day. But I wanted to say that yesterday, there was this interesting thing. I was watching Steve Bannon, and he said at one point when he was talking before the speech of Trump last night, he said, you just have to trust and he paused and he kind of got his thoughts, and he was like, the process. And it was very interesting that he almost said trust the plan. And we know that Steve Bannon was very early in on part of the creation of the Q information campaign and the Q education campaign, and to rise up the digital movement that would really excite a nation as it went. And so it's still going on. And so that was interesting. And just wanted to mention that because I thought that was an interesting point. But what Patrick Byrne also had to say today is that that he believes that the National Guard deployment is inevitable and absolutely needs to happen, that there should be the deployment of the National Guard. And he said, but however, they should be in different states. That a week before, week before the election, bring the National Guard in, but have the states, have it randomly selected which state they will be operational in, as far as being able to trust who's going where. And so that was an interesting thought as well. And so just to bring us back, to with the machines, right? You have that the CIA found out about the Venezuelan electronic election manipulation way back with the Smartmatic. They found out, they were part of it, right? This goes way back to the UK, okay, and it goes back to the Queen's Privy Council back then. Now the King's Privy Council, but you had George Malloch Brown, right, the head of the Queen's Privy Council, who then, recently in the stolen election years here, we have him as a, senior part of DOMINION, okay, and then he was also the running the Open Societies Foundation, and those two entities were sitting right next to each other I believe in Ontario, I think in Toronto, where their offices were joint located. And we're finding out more and more how the Canadian banks have been involved in all of this, why Carney is presently the Prime Minister of Canada, in this effort to try to redirect and misdirect how the money laundering has gone with massively to do with the cartels and the drug running, but also in all of these economy of sin crime syndicate that comes out of the city of London. And so, we have, of course, in 2007, you had the U.S. Divested from Smartmatic. Okay, that was the one created for Chavez to steal the election in Venezuela. And then, of course, Maduro came in, kept stealing the elections. And then, of course, it was discovered, and the U.S. divested out of it. But then they just had this new front company, Sequoia, come up and buy the same machine, slap a Sequoia stamp on them. And then they came up again, were just used and used. That's the time period, 2007, when you had all the Democrats screaming and yelling about the machines, watch out for the machines, right? Right up through the 2016 election, where he's an illegitimate president, President Trump's illegitimate, and on and so forth, right? For years, when it was Hillary Clinton who almost, almost had an aneurysm when she lost that night. It's quite beautiful to see. But so then you had DOMINON buy Sequoia. Okay, they bought Sequoia out, right? And then you had Staple Street involved there in this transaction with the CCP, and this is how it's just gone. And now it's Liberty Vote. So it's just the same machines, and you have ES&S, of course, straight out of the UK, and so there's ESS&S, and so this is they're all the same machine. It can never be used. They can never be used. It's a absolute fact. Remotely accessed, change in real time, do whatever they want. Okay, and a lot of what they do is the manipulation of the information of the people. This gets into the CCP tablets that President Trump also mentioned last night, the CCP tablets, okay, supposedly made in Taiwan, where they're not. They're just sent to Taiwan from China. And of course, can also within those tablets change the information, the voter information, so that you get to the voting station and they say, oh, your address doesn't match. You already voted this, that, and the other thing. And they do it that way as well. Okay. And then somewhere else, probably, it will come up later that you did vote, and for of course, a Democrat. And so let's hope that this Tim Meisberger can get up, and that I'm trying to find out information about him. I didn't have tons of time to look into it today, but I'm going to keep trying to find this person that Patrick Byrne thinks should be brought on board. And so as we go on and see what's coming next, because what John Solomon has been very clear about is that this is absolutely the beginning. Him with Bill Pulte, of course, making this happen at DNI. They are saying, both Patrick Byrne and Solomon both said that Ratcliffe, because he was the DNI when this happened, that he tried to expose this CCP report, right? That they, had discovered the thousands and thousands of licenses, fake licenses, flown in by the CCP, and they go to Guam and they get licenses, but these were just fake, created. I mean, you don't have to go to Guam to get a license, right? And have it match the system. This is kind of the specialty of our intelligence agencies, that they can create those documents, fake documents, pretty easily, right? And so, we have this combination of espionage of the CCP, which is who they're focusing on, and Iran. They're focusing on Iran. Both of those things are true. Okay, we'd love to see some UK stuff. We'd love to see some other, countries brought in here, but trusting the step-by-step process and this threat of communism that is so intense, and that was the CCP plan in what is the deployment against the United States, along with the Red-Green Alliance, right? And so that comes out of globalism. So it's the globalist bankster European International with the Islamic foot soldier regime, with, of course, the CCP money and influence campaigns, and not to mention buying up tons of property and universities, everything. So you have DeSantis coming out today immediately and saying, then we have to send the 800,000 Chinese students home. Yes, hello, doi. And DeSantis just keeps kicking it out of the park in Florida. I mean, his one problem is his energy and his solar stuff, and his whatever things are holding him up there with the energy in Florida. But he did last week, I believe, ban all foreign students from state-funded universities and colleges in Florida. All foreign students just banned. That's pretty huge. And so very interesting. So he's coming out and calling for the Chinese students to have their visas pulled. And so this is all interesting. So I'll take a minute to just look into, of course, this one woman. We've got the clear, when we look at, okay, where's the indictments? What's going to happen? When are they going to go after the people that, and show us the crimes and put these people in jail? Well, when we look at Nikki Flores, I believe she's going to be getting subpoenaed. And I think that this would probably, for entertainment purposes, only look like the first indictment we might see of a recognizable name that is getting out there into the press, of Nikki Flores, who worked for the FBI, and she was part of the counterintelligence division in the FBI, but she was the head of the foreign interference task force, and this was specifically to look to foreign interference in our elections. And she what happened with her is she said in her own words, and those are part of the documents released when you go to read, that you'll see that she was part of what she said I'm basically creating a shadow secret government here in the FBI to close out any information about CCP election interference, right? And this is huge, right? So we get her all caught, she's caught, right? And what happens, she says, I've set up an entire shadow government to conceal the evidence, right? And she's basically this woman, it looks like she's going to be looking at prison bars quite soon. So what happens is she had already, okay, before this CCP cover up, documentation began, she was already promoting that there was a Russian interference in the election, right? That she had already been putting this out through the FBI and pushing this narrative that was getting leaked to the media and et cetera. And that's why you have the creation of the Hunter Biden laptop is Russian interference narrative, right? And the 50 CIA agents that all should be charged, okay, with sedition for that lie back about the Hunter Biden laptop. But she also then this is where Wray comes in, because not only did Wray lie under oath to Congress that he had no knowledge of this foreign interference and et cetera, et cetera. Well, basically, he directed that at the FBI, all states field offices, all the field offices in the states and abroad, in the territories, were all told that they had to pass all information that they had on foreign election interference that came through their offices had to be sent. And this is the D.C. headquarters. Okay, this is Wray. This is on him. The reports had to go directly to Nikki Flores' team first. That they couldn't just be sent up the chain. They had to send all that information to her. And she was the one who was massaging the daily briefs about this situation to President Trump. She was the one who was basically burying not just CCP. It's coming, hopefully it will all come out. But basically, she was the one burying the evidence. And then in 2022, as a reward, she goes to Microsoft and is working in some security capacity there, pretty important high up position, just as Lisa Monaco, who basically was the real AG. Lisa Monaco was deputy AG. Merrick Garland was the, just hapless AG at the time. And Monaco, of course, was the one responsible for all the prosecution of the J6, the J6ers, the creation of a massive explosion of legal hit jobs on these people, at creating the entire narrative of domestic teaism that they were being charged with, the teaism charges where they're getting 18 years, 20-year sentences. So many people have died. Another J6er just committed suicide recently, about 10 days ago. Very, very sad. And we have then also, of course, Monaco did the prosecutions of Trump that would follow. And we're seeing what's going on with Jack Smith. And hopefully when Jack Smith gets subpoenaed, when Jack Smith gets prosecuted for Arctic Frost and all the lies and the direct access to people's texts and 45 Congress members, 24 from the Senate, or 20 senators, 24 congressmen, that hopefully he will do the flipperoo on Lisa Monaco, okay, because this is what's going to be happening, and hopefully Chris Wray will be charged as well. But this is where we have the DOJ and the entire intelligence community operating as a shadow government, committing committing sedition and then what becomes treason, with operating a coup with a stolen election on a sitting president and on a country. This is against all of us, because this gets into what is a conspiracy against rights. This gets into where we were all American citizens, all disenfranchised of our votes, and a coup committed on our country. And basically, it's pretty dire. It's pretty dire, but hopefully this was sinking in to the people. Hopefully the people are starting to get it. And all of us who have been doing this for so many years already know, but it's important what Trump did last night, especially in the buildup here towards what will have to be a national election emergency where there is emergency powers that can't be challenged in court and can only be refuted by 2/3 of the Congress, both bodies. And so another thing that Mark Wayne Mullen did say when he was asked a question, not in his speech, but when he was asked a question about these crimes, he said everyone who purposely withheld intelligence and participated in the 2020 election crimes or cover-up will be pursued and prosecuted. So he said they also will, none of these people will ever also, at the very least, ever hold a security clearance again or work for the federal government again. So, it's Mark Wayne Mullen, he just irks me. Another wonderful thing that was, that Trump made a point of saying early on in the speech last night was calling out Barack Obama. And this was when he was talking about the burn bags. And he said that Barack Obama directed the evidence to be destroyed. He directed this evidence to be destroyed. And so this is very important. This is about, more is going to come. More is going to come. I can't just keep, at 36 minutes, I can't keep focusing on too much of these details because I want to get over here to what also happened then at the same time. On the same day was this summit of Marco Rubio, Scott Bessent, Stephen Miller, and others holding this summit where they are basically saying that we are going to go after all the left-wing money. And this is pretty huge because, we haven't seen, this really said en masse. We keep saying, oh, they're gonna, it's happening, they're going after, they're seizing the money. And I mean, they've said they're going after Neville Singham, things like this. But this massive, having delegates from 70 countries here at this time before the midterm elections, okay, is massive because this gets into the lawfare that's already planned. It gets into the riots in the streets, the Plan No King stuff, all of that kind of activism. But it's the voter registration activism that is so huge, and it's the funneling of the billions through these left-wing groups. It's the socialist candidates that have been hugely part of gaining these seats through election fraud and stealing. Think of Spanberger. Think of all of these people. Okay, with their fake seats, right? And so, basically, what we have with Rubio and this summit is that they've vowed to go after left-wing violent groups, but also the funding of this and the training of these people. And so specifically cited was Mayor Karen Bass of LA. That's very huge. Of course, she did train literally with, Castro's communist training groups there, and I can't remember the name of the group that she was in at the time, in Cuba. So they're obviously going for Cuba. This is going to be a change. The government's going to fall there. Hopefully they won't do a Venezuela and just keep, the underlings in, but really let the people have elections and a new government. This holding control, I get it in the leverage level, right? But on some level too, this whole thing of humanity being free within their countries to make those choices to truly move forward. We already see that since USAID has been dismantled, not one socialist or leftist candidate has been elected through South America and Central America. Okay, like the people already are taking care of it, right? And I get it, Cuba's right off our border. I get it with the Venezuela oil situation and all the information out of the stolen elections, which was literally Gonzalez, who is now acting as president of Venezuela. She was way more involved with her twin brother than Maduro, who is kind of like a talking idiot compared to those two master criminals with the cartels. But anywho's, moving on. What also is that what Rubio is saying is that the U.S. counterterrorism, which was, basically the task force at ODNI, was just gutted by Pulte. He said they're pivoting to left-wing, dangerous left-wing activist teaism and domestic teaism, and everything socialism and communism, which is fantastic. And basically from what was under the former counterterrorism under Biden, but still going on, was this whole situation of creations of ISIS, all of this Middle East effery, right? And then jihadism effery, and then there was the American Christians. The most dangerous people in the world are those American Christians, right? And that was, of course, what Biden declared, and Mayorkas and DHS declared as well. And so that is a huge announcement. Basically, we're going after the socialists. And then Scott Bessent came in and said, we are dismantling the NGO networks worldwide that fund these organizations. And so that's massive. That's where we get into the big money, and we get into all of the networks underneath it that are this. And so Stephen Miller talked more about the philosophy behind it. He was saying that the main way they come in is through deception. What the Democrat socialists are doing, that they lie, claiming they're focusing on civil liberties in order to dismantle the exact civil liberties that they are claiming that they are fighting for. And that is basically the DSA playbook, and it's every communist playbook. They have a united front where they basically get all of their proxy groups funded by these massive billions. Way back in the day for Bolshevism, it was the Rockefellers et al., right? And then with Mao, you get all of the big Bank Street elite, where they come in as, these reformist groups for the people, right? Lying, and then immediately kill all the people. And then they kill, of course, the farmers, and they stop the food production, and they cause the starvation, and they seize the land and everything, and all of that money, all those resources consolidates into the pockets of the billionaires, right? It is totalitarianism is what it is. And I think that is the better name for it, that just people don't know. They don't think of totalitarianism, but that's what it is. It's control of everything, in the top down, control of all institutions, all means of production, all industry, with basic, slave population control. So yeah, that was fantastic. And we're going to see more. I'm going to dig deeper into the summit. See who they're specifically naming. We know Cuba's huge on their list. There's a focus, there's a step-by-step movement that they are doing here. And it's very important, and it's very exciting. And even though we wish it was like, can we just, get all of the deep state people arrested? We do wish that. And they will. There's more and more that are going to keep falling. And we would look to this, what's going to be happening here with Nikki Flores. I would think that she will be, that charges will be coming against her very soon. So very important stuff. Okay, so let's see what else I'm going to cover. I think I'm going to talk about Ukraine here, and we'll get into yeah, I'm going to talk about Ukraine. So Ukraine, it's still going on, the dismantling of the government. So after NATO, everything has changed. And the Graham takeout, his death, the blowing up of the hotel, everything since Graham's death and NATO Zelensky meetup. And Trump saying, yeah, we'll just give you the missile codes, no problem. We'll just come train you. We'll make patriots right there. Everything has shifted. And the EU is freaking out, trying to rush to have their FF that they need to show that Russia wants to hit, the EU countries there in the eastern in the Baltic states, Trump coming out and saying, what's coming behind the scenes here with NATO and at that summit, we're getting ready to bail on Article 5. Okay, we're bailing out of the command structure of NATO. Leave it up to you guys. I think Germany will be, the head of NATO coming up, and we're not going to defend any kind of drone attacks by, either manufactured drones out of Eastern Europe or etc. that are used to attack Russia. The U.S. won't be here, and we also want Greenland, by the way. And Greenland's pivotal point if you want to keep America in NATO. And so after this, Zelensky fires the prime minister, right? We've got then the special envoy, and then she's becoming the envoy to the U.S. envoy to America, replacing the other U.S. envoy who was tied up in there with, Graham et al., right? And then she gets hauled up on charges to do with fraud, and then we get today the firing, or no, like 3 days ago, again, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all like huge shifts in the Ukraine government. Everything's kind of falling apart, and he's trying to consolidate power here. And this is all very interesting point here that I'm going to raise, which is that we have Ukraine. Huge protests in the streets, thousands of people now I think today was the second day, where this was Zelensky fired the defense minister. This is Mikhail Fedorov, and Mikhail Fedorov is one of the people who is vying to be the new president of Ukraine, and very, I think, both America and Israel connected. But I think but it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell at this point because he's very, very connected to Palantir, Mikhail Fedorov, and he's only 35. He's a technocrat. And he came in and basically fused Palantir into the defense of Israel. Israel, might as well say Israel North, right, into Ukraine. And he was hugely at odds with the commander of the army, the commander-in-chief of the military, that is Alexander Syrskyi. Alexander Syrskyi also has been mentioned as wanting to be the next president of Ukraine. And then you have the ambassador to the UK, who spends all his time in the UK, who is a puppet for the crown and the UK and the globalists. And that is, of course, Zelensky. And he used to be defense minister, I believe, or general. He's a general. And so all of this mayhem is going on in the vie for who's going to rule Ukraine coming up. And very, very interesting, this situation of Fedorov having been building out Palantir into their systems, and then what happens to Lindsey Graham, right? And then what happens to the Skyfall drone factory. Very, very interesting, this development. I really wanted to make sure you knew about it. And this is even more of an interesting point. Well, maybe not more, but then with Fedorov gone, then who Zelensky installs, okay, as the new defense minister is the SBU head, the Secret Service, the intelligence director, Eugenie Kamara, I don't know how you say it, but Kamara, Eugenie Kamara, who I've been talking about lots in these last few weeks as the one who successfully executed Spiderweb in the special task force they had as a drone assassination task force that did the Spiderweb's attack on Moscow. So then they threw out the intelligence chief, and then they put him in as intelligence chief. And his specialty is drone assassinations. And so now he is full bore. Mr. Assassination is now the head of the defense. He is the defense minister. And so who they're going to replace him with as the special police, the CIA of Ukraine, we will see. We will see. It's all interesting. Huge changes. Okay, huge changes that are going on. Not to mention what's going on with Iran and them attacking the American base that's just at the very south of Syria, right? This is, after the NATO meetup with El Jawali, um, former Gitmo resident, who's now the president of Syria, right? And the Trump telling Israel to get out of Syria, out of Lebanon, but go down, switch operations, go down to Somaliland, and watch out for those uh, Baba Mandeb Straits. El Baba Mandeb Straits I was talking about there, the port of Aden and the access to the Red Sea. Let's create something there so we can control that choke point as well. And so that happens. There's the attack on the base. IRGC claims it supposedly and says this is in response to the attack on Bandar Abbas, that where the U.S. blew up the bridges and roads, saying this is the IRGC stronghold in this area. It just happens to be right at the choke point of the strait. And so that is where they've been hitting in the last 2 days, the bridges and roads, going to that. And everybody's hair on fire saying, all the people that hate Trump anymore now because of Iran and saying he's, killing all the people, he's blowing up the roads and bridges. No, no, this is in a specific area right next to the strait, right there at the little triangle that strait comes up like this. There's a choke point, and here's Bandar Abbas. And that's where they destroy the bridges and roads, and going after the IRGC, who then supposedly retaliates and hits the base that's right across the border from Iraq, 3 days after Trump meets with the prime minister of Iraq, saying we're taking the troops out of Iraq and we're going to basically do trade deals with Iraq, and that they are going to be part of build-outs here in America. Yeah, I don't know about I don't know about these investments by Iraq in our country, but I personally don't feel too great about any Islamist country investing in our country, as much as I don't want the CCP to invest in our country. I think that we can really, really, build up that economy if we really reined it all back in, as McKinley would have. It's different. Tariffs aren't the same as mass investments from foreign countries that their entire ideology is based on deception. Okay, it's deception to a certain point where it becomes outright obvious, as we've seen everywhere else that Islam goes for the last 1,000 years plus. Okay, so here we are at 52 minutes. I know this one was a little squirrely, but if you did find that some of the information I gave was added value, and you want to support the channel, hugely appreciated. There's a way to do so below, and it's so important. Helps me do more videos, and it helps me to have more time to research those videos and be less hurried as I was today. So thanks so much for watching. So appreciate you. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Get out and do some Liberty events, okay? Do some 250 celebrations. Hopefully you get to do fellowship with your other people who are part of your churches and communities, and that you just have a great, fantastic weekend. And also make those phone calls to your senator, to your congressman, and then you'll feel so good you did. And then do it again on Monday, okay? All right, everyone, you are free, and I'll see you on Monday.